Boon, 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 boon. I'm a little bongo man. I'm a little chongo man. I'm a little monkey man. I'm not a man at all. I'm a little bongo man. A funky monkey chongo man. I'm a little bongo man. I'm not a man at all. Do-do. I'm a little bongo. I'm a little chongo man. So the minute that I turn this on, like, jets fly overhead, people start whacking things. I'm going to close this window. We'll get this started. God, you guys. Okay, there we go. Howdy, everybody. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Okay, so we are live. We have got sound. The windows are closed. It's so funny, right? When you turn on the microphone, that's when everybody starts yelling outside, like just construction gets underway. Somebody starts hammering on something. The Blue Angels fly overhead. Where am I? I got to come out of the internet, man. Pounding. They've decided to start pounding now. So that's great. Hey, everybody. It's old Anchor and Furnail here. Back once again on Drunkens and Dragons. We're going to try to get done. Well, hey, thanks. Okay, just a second. I'm going to fix this. Just a second. Okay. Hey, folks. All right, I'm back. We have blocked out the dwarvish quarry that is being delved outside, apparently. Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm back. We are going to get this done despite all of these different issues. We're going to make this happen. I really wanted to do this stream. It has a very near and dear place in my heart. Want to get it done. Technical difficulties are gone. Concentration is ours. Let's just namaste it all away. Happy Friday, everybody. Hanker and Furnail here. Back to talk about my current campaign. And the sort of the purpose of this video, it was to, oh, by the way, thanks, Andrew. Beers are on you, I suppose. It was to find a little bit of a sweet spot between all the theory that my channel and others are always putting out about D&D, but not take it so far that it's just like actual play videos, which to me is almost like TMI. Like, it's just, I don't expect you guys to pick through hours and hours and hours of gameplay just to get a sense for like what's going on in my game. So it's somewhere in between there, between those two extremes, is just what I would call a campaign report. So a campaign report is just, you know, what has happened and like where we at, right? Rather than having to watch an actual play and then on the other end, just getting a bunch of sort of theory. So that's what I wanted to do, is kind of break this down. And then at the end of the video, hey, stick around. I'm going to stream for about an hour here. Stick around to the end, do some Q&A little session there. And then there's like a whole boatload of announcements to get through. So we'll do all kinds of zany announcements of all kinds of things that are happening in the Runehammer universe, the Runeverse. Okay. Hey, actually, that doesn't sound entirely that bad. The Runeverse. That's pretty good. Okay. Anyway, let's get to the business. So let's make sure I can do what I expect to do here. Is this going to work? Probably not. So let's jump over. You ever have those times where you just can't get a break, like with your sort of technical knowledge checks? I'm having one of those weeks. Like, everything's getting weird on me lately. Okay, what? Yikes-os. I think you're going to see some crazy here for a second. Hey, there we go. I got it. Okay. So Oh, hey, thanks, Joel D. That's great. And we'll talk about all that stuff here at the end of the stream. But let me get through this because this is a mouthful. And I just want to sort of slam through this whole thing and the theory that goes with it. So I won't be seeing the comments here for just a second. I'm just going to go fully into Photoshop Brain. So here I am in Photoshop Brain. See? Woo! I'm drawing in there. Okay, so as many of you guys know, and thank you all the readers out there, 5e Hardcore Mode has been out for a few months now. It's got a lot of readers and a lot of people poking at it. And my group too has been playing right out of the 5e Hardcore Mode PDF. And so partially this campaign report is about just our game and just what's been going on. But it's also partially about a sort of massive, what you could call a play test for good old 5e Hardcore Mode. You can get your copy on Drive-Thru-RPG, blah, blah, blah. But we came into it saying, like, let's play this way. This is the game we want to play. It's basically 5e with some numbers stripped down and some simpler monster math. And we also wanted to play in Eberron. So we created our own kind of crazy Frankenstein. So before I get into the actual campaign, like the number of sessions we've done and the sort of the interesting analytics and sort of the, I hope it's interesting, the path of the sort of choice design that we've done, let me introduce you to our cast of characters, all right? So this is how it began. We rolled stats before we chose our characters so that we could fit the character concepts to the stats because we're just rolling stats pure. And then my group sort of slowly took those stats and worked up this group. They wanted to build a pretty synergistic group. So we've got our halfling cleric, we've got our gnome gunslinger, we've got our human tank who's just a straight up battlemaster fighter, and then we have our half-elven sorcerer. So they whipped up this group, and this is where it started. And before we get into the campaign, this is just something that I wanted to show you guys because it's something that's always a part of my games, is the sort of the evolution of characters. And we're only 8 sessions into the game so far, so you're not going to see the full arc here, but you're going to see a start for it, and I wanted to show you that. So here's just the line art that, you know, got it kicked off. And then here's when we brought color into it, and we made some adjustments. So like my players wanted some adjustments to, like, it sounds silly, but like hair and jaw lines and exact details of gear and stuff. So we got these dialed in, and we were digging this feeling and these color schemes and stuff like this. And especially, you know, once we had to switch from a live group to an online group, these little doodles here became more important as far as visualizing characters. Further on through the story, we've had a couple of TPKs. We had a true death for our sorcerer who had to be resurrected, and we're going to talk about all that. But basically, they're a lot worse for wear. They salvaged some cold weather gear, and then they went to this. This is sort of their next phase, and this is when they were going up to the Mror Holds, which is like the great snowy sort of northeast of Eberron, of Corvair on Eberron. And so they got more into like some furry cold gear, and they're kind of more beat up, and they've got some blood splatters on their gear and stuff like that. So they're leveling up. And then we've gone through a lot more since then, and they sort of have reached this phase. So our sorcerer has changed a little less because he's less gear oriented. And then the guys have been upgrading their armor. They met some dwarven forge masters, and they got some custom stuff made. And Uni is our gunslinger, our little gnome, nasty little gnome. He was also killed by Dolgons in a dungeon, and the players couldn't find a way to actually resurrect him, so all they did was raise dead. So he's actually a risen dead. So he's kind of, we call it the Pet Cemetery effect. So he doesn't come back quite right. You know? So like, if you this is a grungy little dude. Let me tell you what. But I think what's fun here is, you know, the old saying, it's not the road, it's the miles, right? It's not about the journey so much, it's just the distance that you travel is what changes you. And changing characters over time, to me, is always a great way to, you know, keep the players, you know, seeing themselves inside those characters, and also wanting to push the game, because hopefully they're curious about how their art's going to change. You know, like the next week, I'm going to say, hey guys, I got some of the new art modifications done. And they're like, ooh. And then I hope that drives them in game to go after new experiences and new equipment and stuff like that. So that's my group of heroes, which are generally have called themselves the Men of Mugburg. And this is where we get into our campaign. Now, Mugburg is a nickname. So here, I did this yesterday, but we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it a little bit better. So that was a look at yesterday's work. And this time we're going to go from the top down. So the first anchor of the game is the word Mugburg. And this is the nickname that we gave the pub where I met my new friends here in Philly. So just met someone online, and we said, hey, let's go have a beer. And we went to this place, and we're kicking it, and we were like, man, this pub's great. I could really like get into being here quite frequently. Let's hang out and get to know each other. And then we actually met in the tavern, in the pub, 3 times before we ever played D&D, and this was as we were gathering the group. So I met my one homie there, and then we said, hey, yo, I know a buddy who wants to get in on a game. We should get him in here. So then the next week we meet up again, and we've got a player, and then we said, oh, I know these 2 homies. Bumped into a guy here in Philly, and so we pulled them together, got 4 players and me, and we nicknamed the pub that we drink at Mugburg, just being goofy drunks late at night. We're just like, welcome to the town of Mugburg. And so what we did is, as we built our game world sort of collaboratively, we said, I want to play in Eberron, but it's kind of like a ruined Eberron. It's kind of different. And we are all friends, like our characters are friends from a little town called Mugburg. So that's how it all began. And that's how we kicked it off. So let's see. I think I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use this nice diagram I did yesterday because I like it. Because I like it. Yeah. All right. So these are our sessions so far. So I just want to show you guys exactly what is going on here. So first of all, we have, I guess what you could call sailing. So what happens right here? This is the legendary, the often talked about session 1 of the campaign. So session 0, in a way, was all about, Mugburg. It was meeting each other, becoming friends, talking about what kind of game we wanted to get into, rolling up some stats, thinking about what kind of players these could be, characters they could be. And by the time we came to session 1, I wanted to hit them right away with a choice that could basically fundamentally branch the campaign. And because, we had sort of loose ideas of what this game was going to be, and it really never shook out exactly which kind of thing we were thinking. And so on the one side, we have got sailing, and then over here, which they did not do, is, we can call it Droem. So basically, here's how things begin. One day, these guys are in this little town. They're like farming. One guy has his house that's been sort of wrecked, and he's kind of a nomad. And this sort of the town alarm sounds like this bell, and they all go down to the dock, like the pier, and the whole town is like gathered. And these large warships, these big galleons, have pulled into the town, and they're saying, there's a king's decree that we have to go find out the nature of this tide, the tide problem. So here's where we're getting into our first session 0 decision, which is we're in Eberron, but we're in a wrecked Eberron, and it took the form of an ever-rising tide. So I have a world map here somewhere, and it's barely worth showing. It's just Eberron, but with lots less landmass, and so we have the water is encroaching. And so the king has said, all able-bodied people need to get on these ships and take the captain's orders, and you're going to go sail the world and try to find an answer for why the tide is happening and if there's a way to stop it. As they're waiting in line to be sort of measured and do like a calisthenics test to get on the ship, there's all these rumors kind of moving through the crowd as they're waiting to get on their respective ships, and they're being, names are being taken at a big desk and stuff like this. There's this murmur going through the crowd that this thing is coming through the woods called a meat box. And it's actually kind of like a boogeyman story. Like the meat box is some kind of big like war wagon that is run by monsters that is sort of like covered with the bodies of its fallen victims, right? And it's this terrible thing that's moving through the woods. And most people just consider it like a boogeyman story. It's not really real. But somebody started a rumor that it's like approaching town. But they're just like, it's probably just talk, just, somebody trying to get out of their duty. You know what I mean? So they're waiting in line, like sort of joining the Navy, basically. And so right away, they have this choice of, do you guys want to go see if this stuff is has veracity at all? If these rumors are true, if this thing is coming through the woods, like it's probably not good for your hometown. Or do you want to sort of do your kingly duty and get on this ship and go join one of these expeditions? And so that was the very first decision that they needed to make as a group in character. And so they chose to go on the ship, which is a little bit surprising to me, but they chose to go on the ship. And so this thing called the meat box is approaching town. Now, the reason I wrote Droem on there is in Corvair in Eberron, Droem is like a monster nation which is just west of Breland, where these guys are from. And since the water has been encroaching everywhere, like this monster nation is basically like running out of real estate. So they're being forced to press into new lands, and that's what this meat box thing is. It's like a war party. They didn't choose this, though. So remember, red means they don't choose the option. So they go sailing. They sail out, and if you guys have been watching my room design videos, this sailing out is mob the deck. So they're sailing, a bunch of mermen attack the ship, and then there's these crazy sharp rocks that they're needing to navigate through. They wound up not doing so hot at that because, you know, when you're a brand new team, you don't work together quite as well as a few sessions in. They wind up smashing the ship. Most, I think 40 of the crew are lost during this whole thing, and then the rest of the crew gets onto these jagged little islands. Some other mysterious tidbits happen, and then they're facing this next session, which is exploring the island, and this is, I think, what we called Gills' Hideout. So at this point, you know, they're just leaves on a river. They're not really choosing their own fate yet, as far as, you know, sort of what's possible in D&D. They're kind of just floating along, you know, bobbing along the current of life here and being taken along by the story. So they find this cavern. Their orders from the captain who went down with the ship were to explore these islands, see if there's any kind of clue about, you know, what kind of seafaring shenanigans are going on with these mermen they're attacking, and maybe it's linked to the tide problem. I mean, it's got to be, right? It's D&D. So they're exploring through the tidal cave. They find some clues. They find like an old ship's ledger and all this kind of great stuff. They get through to the other side. They're fighting mer people. They're fighting a few human guards who work for a sort of enigmatic faction. So then in session 3, they find this cave. And if you guys have watched my room design videos, it's called The Doors. And so you have what we'll call Mantas Cave. So they find this warforged manta, who's like a seafaring warforged, and he is running some kind of operation. They're moving adamantium ingots around. They're moving Cyberius shards, which are kind of like crystals. And they're also like have a search going for something called the Dragon Heart, for this relic. And this Manta character, who's this big badass warforged, he has these 3 portals in this cave where he seems to be coordinating this whole effort. They're moving lots of these adamantium ingots. He's giving orders, and seems like, and then the players look into these portals, these gateways, and you can see 3 different sort of environs, if you will. You've got a jungle scene, you've got a snow scene, and then you've got sort of a fiery scene. And apparently this cave is a sort of center point for whatever operation is being run here. The players decide this guy is nasty because of this whole thing with the mer people that they've been dealing with. They're clearly villains. They're like merciless, and they've seen plenty of evidence of that. They know that this guy is in charge, so it's just like, this is the boss of the bad guys. Let's take him down. They go in, they wipe. They wiped out TPK. But one of the things about good old hardcore mode is a little doodad called Zymer's Candle, which is basically a save point with 3 uses. So you can plant a save point in your world, and you can wipe, and then you'll go back to that save point. So you can do really tough boss fights more than once, because to me, that's the best way to learn a boss fight, is actually try it and fail it, rather than have your DM maybe even nerf a boss fight because it looks like it's going to go really badly. So they wipe on the Manta. They burn down a third of the candle. They appear there, and they get another attempt at it. And this time, like all good RPGs, they use strategy, they use their equipment, they bring their full force, they defeat the Manta, and they decide to go into the jungle environment to investigate. So now here we are at Zendrik. Okay, so this is the next session. Now, Zendrik is the enigmatic jungle continent on Eberron. They go there, they meet some NPCs, and especially they meet one very important NPC, Kala, who I didn't really know would be important, but it's kind of like a woman in like a tiger suit who is the chieftain of these cool jungle people. And they walk into a bad situation. There's a stone giant who is apparently rampaging through these old ruins looking for something, and another one of these high-powered warforged, which is also looking for something. So they meet these jungle people, get to know them, kind of get into it a little bit. I just lost my train of thought. They get into it a little bit, And they decide, rather than just like going after this giant, which seems like low-hanging fruit, they're going to go recon the Warforged guy. So they basically creeping through the jungle, just looking if they can like get eyes on this Warforged guy. They spot him. It seems like he's a little too powerful. They kind of ease back. They go back. They make some plans, and they coordinate to attack this giant. They get into this big battle, and here's where our sorcerer was killed by a boulder toss. Okay, so let's make sure that I'm doing what I'm doing here. I just had like a total, like my brain just erased itself. Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So, okay. So here we have Zendrik is down here. So they're going through this. So this little piece of 3 right here, that represents those 3 portals in the cave that are like that, right? And so they can go to jungle, snow, or fire, basically. This is really the long and the short of it. So they go to jungle, and this little offshoot here, this is a true choice. They truly have 3 choices. I did not railroad them down any one of these choices at all. So they go down Zendrik. They're going, and they find out about this Dragonheart thing. They're trying to get it, and then they just don't. Because their sorcerer was killed by the boulder toss, they basically just bail on their whole mission. They say, like, screw the relic. We need to bring our homie back. He's our friend. We've got to resurrect him. So my players are researching how they might do a resurrection. And they basically find some crazy, like, obscure notes by Matt Mercer about this sort of place in Zendrik from 4th edition Eberron, this altar of resurrection that can be used. And it's just kind of like, wow, this is just the internet. Amazing. So they basically abandon their mission, and they go through this whole harrowing ordeal to resurrect their sorcerer. And what you're seeing on my little diagram here, this red bit, that's failure. They completely fail to get the Dragonheart. They fail to prevent the bad guys from getting it. The bad guys not only get the relic, they walk off with it. They disappear. Like, my players lose the trail. And they also lose a few key lives in the process. We had a few innocents that kind of got caught in the crossfire of all this. And so this little side shoot of trying to find what this relic is, the Dragonheart, and stop the bad guys from getting it, not only did they not accomplish that, they lost and had to resurrect a character in the process, and they lost some innocents in the process. And Kala, her fate is like sort of bound to the Dragonheart. So when it's stolen from her land, she begins to sort of shrivel and die. So now they have another timer on the game. The first timer is that the tide is ever rising. And now the second timer is like, if they don't figure out something, Kala's going to die. And they really like her. She seemed like she's really cool. You know how players just love an NPC at random sometimes. So they go back, and they're like, okay, we're on to something. We can see there's a grander operation going on here, but honestly, we just don't know what it is. So they go back to the Mantas Cavern, where they have these 3 portals, and they're like, all right, do we go to the sort of the fiery area, or do we go to the snow area? They decide to go to the snow area because maybe they think in snow they'll be able to track the enemy. So here's this middle choice. Boop. And there is session 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is session 7, and this is session 8 right here. This was last night, or Wednesday night. So in session 7, they go to the Mror Holds, which are the dwarven sort of high snowy peaks in Corvair on Eberron. They go there, and they discover this is where all the adamantium is being mined and transported by these sort of villainous factions. And really quick, they kind of go from 0 to 60 as far as information at this point in the campaign. And this is something to remember for our sort of theory section, which is coming next. They get an information dump. They find out that the Lord of Blades, who is like the big primary villain in Eberron, one of them, is behind this. He is forcing the dwarves to mine adamantium for him by using these sort of warforged taskmasters, who are, you know, sort of enslaving the dwarves almost with these Dolgaunt servants, which are nasty buggers if you look those up. They are forcing the dwarves, and they're just mining the adamantium dry. Thousands upon thousands of ingots are being moved. Later, the characters even find a sort of a set of blueprints which show what they were starting to suspect, which is that something is being built, a gigantic warforged monster, which is actually a fucking warforged dragon. Dun, dun, dun. This is the Lord of Blades' new huge plan. He's making this colossal, like city-sized dragon out of adamantium that's going to be animated like a warforged is going to use it to ravage the world and take over, blah, right? So they discover all this. They go 0 to 60 as far as information, but now they need to help these dwarves. And the dwarves, especially one of them, sort of my NPC, comes up and he's like, you guys, you got to help us. We're like mining the mountain dry. You know, we're violating the sacred dwarven pact. And they're like, they've driven us so far down into the mountain that we've actually opened up some horror down there. And all our paladins, who are called the Guardians of the Silver Flame in Eberron, they all go down there to try to fight, and they've never returned. And so they're like, you guys have to help us find our paladins are like our people, our leaders, our faith anchors. They're down there somewhere, and there's these horrors coming out of blah, 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 blah. So naturally, the characters have to go down into this horrific ice dungeon where they're encountering all these, sort of Dalkir abominations. So you can look that up too. In Eberron, it's this sort of dark underground force. And they basically have like a sort of a combination of Duragar and Illithids down there. And they're messing with all this. And then we have our second real hardcore player death, which is our gnome. He tries to take on two Dolgons sort of a little bit by himself and just gets completely iced. I mean, there's not even a discussion if he's dead, like you're gone. So that happens. And this time they manage to complete their quest without him, even though they're carrying his body. They come back, then that's kind of the end of the session, and they're really desperate for a way to bring him back. But at this time, they don't fail. They manage to sort of rescue the dwarves. The portals get sealed off, so no more adamantium for bad guy. But also, since the portals are sealed, now they're kind of a little bit up the creek because they're, in a distant part of the world. And then we come to session 8. Session 8, and this is what really made me want to do this video, is the first town session in our entire game. And this is in the dwarven town of Scairn. And for the first time, they don't have something chasing them or some imminent explosive threat happening right in front of their faces. They actually have a minute to regroup, to do town things, to build gear, to level up, to learn some spells, to talk to dwarves, to get more information, to think about their overall plan, to basically come up with an intention for what they're going to do and how they're going to. Now they know almost everything. They know mostly where everything's happening. They know who's doing it and the imminent evil that's ahead. They basically have all the information they need. What they need now is a plan and an idea. And so exactly what they do is less interesting to me for the purpose of this video as what the structure of this campaign is. That's really what I wanted to talk about. So let me finish my notes here, which this is all the Zendrick thing, the dead end. And then this is the Maror Holds. Yeah, and this is town. Now you'll notice there's one more little detail. It's right here. That is a branch. So a branch to me is a true choice in a campaign, right? You guys can go here or here, and that's going to vastly affect how the campaign goes. And they're real choices. They're not fake. I haven't prepped one, and I'm kind of like winking, don't go into the other door. And same with this three-way one. There is a sort of a never pursued choice right here. And now that the portals are all sealed off and gone, I don't know if they're ever going to do that. They did acquire a really clunky, barely functioning dwarven airship, and so they can get around a little better than just sailing in the sea. But still, this to me is very interesting, is the parts of a campaign that are not pursued by players. Why is that interesting? And I'm going to tell you, it is the first principle down here. So let's take a look at our principles. This is from yesterday, and I'm just going to reuse it because I think it captured what I was thinking really well. Okay, so the first aspect here is make them earn town. So that's already implicit in what I was just telling you guys. So they had to go through all this stuff. And by the way, I am vastly over summarizing. You guys know how D&D campaigns are. There's a zillion things to say. So I'm vastly summarizing it. They've gone through all this gameplay. It's been over 3 months of gameplay now. With 11 total meetups. And the first 3 were just sort of conjuring the game, and then we've had 8 sessions. So all that just to get to their first town session. Why would I do that? Am I just mean? Am I just trying to make life hard for them? I'm a huge believer in a campaign saving town as a big reward and as a relief. And the analogy I often use is like camping. If you go camping for one night, you kind of come back the next day, and you feel like, man, I wish I was camping more. If you go camping for 10 days and you come back to town, you're insanely psyched to come back to town. And this is the same effect in a campaign. So that's our first real principle. Now, before I get to the second one, I'm parched. It's very hot out today. I will be right back. I'm going to grab a freaking soda. Okay? I'll be right back. Just hang in for just 1 second. Cannot get a break. I either have technical problems, I have thirst issues, I'm just having a hard time. Okay, so here we go. I have agua, thank goodness. Sweet, sweet water. Okay, where was I? Really trying to get through this. I'm just like, I gotta report the facts to the people. Okay. Real choices, but in limited numbers. That's my second one. I love this principle. This to me is a true guiding light of a good campaign. Notice the little stretches here. We need another color. Notice the little stretches here where some might call this a railroad. Some might say, hey, I'm not seeing branches everywhere, right? So to me, a not so good campaign design is like this. Whoop. And then each of these nodes goes like this. That's not good. It's too many choices, and you don't get these nice water slides of content where you're just kind of tumbling through the action, right? And so if you guys have seen my Mario-style world-building video, I talk about this a little bit too, which is I only really have 2 choice points here. And the town would count as the third one. Right, and the town one is actually crazy. The town one has like, maybe 4 or 5 possible outcomes to it. But in all this gameplay, they really only had this kind of moment of, you want to do this or do you want to do that? Or here's 3 things, which one do you think you want to do? And then I'll prep for that for next week, right? But it's not every single week. And this is a lot like saving town. When choices are more focused and not all the time, I think they get more attention and more energy from players rather than like, okay, another session where we just have to come up with what to do because we live in this gigantic sandbox where anything goes, right? So limited choices, but they have a real gravity to them. This next one, also a huge one. And this is really, I think probably the biggest point of learning with this new group I'm playing with is that I do this. And I don't think their previous dungeon masters had done a lot of this because they talk about it all the time and they like face palm about it a lot, which is in my worlds, and in yours too, because you're an awesome, lumpy-headed, crazy person like me, time passes throughout your world, always. So the perfect example of this is back here. Remember the meat box? Remember how they didn't find out if the town really was in danger? Time has been passing. As they've been gone from town here for like more than 2 weeks in game time. If that thing was real, if that rumor was true, then their hometown may not even exist anymore when they finally get back to it. And similarly, when they choose between these 3 gates down here, they're neglecting 2 other choices, and time still keeps moving in those choices. The tide is still rising. The Warforged dragon is still being constructed. Kala is still withering away and dying. Like, these things are still ongoing. So it's just because you get to town doesn't mean you get a 3-month vacation because you're in town. Let's build a fortress and start a salt mine. No, you still have things to do, and they're happening in the world now. And I think this is really important to make your world feel real and to avoid that sleepy vacation feeling that sometimes player characters can get into when they're just like, what if we do next? I don't know. And again, I think that can be a result of too many choices. If your world is an absolute sandbox, I think you can get into the doldrums a little bit of like, well, we got plenty of time and everything's kind of possible. We could do whatever. So let's just stay in town for 2 years. Another reason I can't stand the taking 20 rule. If your dungeon is such that 20 minutes is just sort of disposable, to me that is very strange feeling indeed. So even when Gandalf couldn't remember which way to go, it's not like they could just disappear into Moria for weeks on end. You know what I mean? Like, they had to wait for Gandalf to remember which way to go, but it wasn't just like, hey, let's just camp here for a month. Anyway, time passes everywhere. And finally, as you guys well know, I think as all good dungeon masters know, TPKs and character deaths need to be a part of the fun. The danger needs to be real, or it's just all a farce. The key is that those are not endings. Those are twists. The game does not end, it twists. Now, maybe you don't have a gimmick like Zymer's Candle in your game that lets players wipe out and go back to a save point. Maybe you don't have that. So you're going to have to get a little more creative if you have a full TPK, a true everybody gets killed situation. You have to get a little more creative how that could just be a twist in your story. It might take a new group of characters, but your story just twists. It doesn't end. And especially the session doesn't. You don't want to just end a session with like everybody being like, well, shit, that sucked. That's not cool. And especially with an individual character. I think it's one of the most exciting moments when an individual character gets out and out killed. I mean, I'm talking dead, like no argument is being had here. Like, you're toast, man. You're like negative 60 hit points. You're toast. And if you have a good group where they're truly friends and they care about each other, the way that they instantly prioritize around a fallen friend is amazing. And the discussions they have, like, are you guys going to go on without me? I can play this NPC over here. And, I will almost always keep an NPC on hand that can be jumped into as a character in a pinch. So while you're dead, while they're questing to resurrect you, here, you can play as Tom. And you'll just be Tom until they can get you back into the game. Like, could you whip up a barbarian for me real quick, make him second level, and, we'll just keep on trucking with you in the game. And we're going to be telling stories about that time you got ripped to shreds by Dolgons. So that's that final principle, is like TPKs and character deaths. Are they a bummer? Yes, but they should be a bummer because, death is a bummer, right? But also, it can be exciting, and it's up to you as a dungeon master to be that beacon of fun and energy at this moment, not to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, guys, and yikes, and ooh, and like pins and needles. It's more just like, whoa, and celebrate it. Think of it in a more like Valhalla kind of way. Be exciting about it. Treat it as an epic event, and just keep trucking. The events in your world should be and can be set up in a way that their wipeouts and their failures are just part of the story of this ongoing threat. If they wipe out and it feels like, okay, well, that's kind of it, then you might have a little bit of a one-dimensional story going on. And so a wipeout might just feel like the end, and that's no fun. You want to keep on playing with your homies, and you want to keep this story going and find out the real truth and confront the big evil forces and so on and so forth. So this is really most of my campaign report. We've been through 8 sessions, 3 formative sessions. We've had 1 visit to town. We've had lots of monsters. So I also keep a Google Doc of everything that we do. It includes every piece of treasure that we find. We're pulling our treasure out of the Pathfinder Ultimate Equipment book. That's what we're using as our loot table. So we get all of our loot right out of that book. We just use the roll tables in that Pathfinder book. As far as the rule set, we're playing 5e hardcore mode. And then we have some sort of shenanigans in character builds, which I leave all of that to my players. And so they'll link to me like the wiki where we got our gunslinger class, which is a combination of an old gunslinger class wiki that was written up and Matt Mercer's gunslinger, and just kind of building it that way. And then we kind of have a slightly kludged sorcerer class that we kind of played with a little bit to, because that's how my player wanted to do it. So those are the stats. I would say probably the biggest thing they've taken on in this was probably a stone giant. So after about mid-second level or third level, I will begin to mix in monsters that are played like straight out of the book with no compromises, like basically making them as nasty as I can without homebrewing them. And this actually, I've found, can make monsters tougher if you really research a monster well and play it with full effect. And that's how we did the stone giant. So the sorcerer fires this lightning bolt, kind of draws the ire of the stone giant. He comes down, and I'm randomly selecting actions, and he does boulder toss right on my sorcerer. Rolls a nat 20. Like 50 some damage. My sorcerer has like 9 HP. Totally smashed. So anyways, I keep track of every monster they encounter in the Google Doc, every piece of treasure, and all their little ins and outs with NPCs and clues. And this is partially for my players to be able to smartly look at the campaign and make decisions and have thoughts, but it's also so I don't have to keep all that craziness in my head. So that's how far we've gone. As far as like scope, 5e hardcore mode does max out at level 10, but I know we're going to be going quite a ways beyond that. They're all about level 5 right now. as far as scope, I would say this is maybe a quarter of what I was seeing as the possible sort of arc of this portion of the game. So I think we're looking at a 1-year game. So this is about 3 months. So that's feeling really good. So I'll have maybe 2 more of these campaign reports throughout 2020 as we keep on playing. Now, we did have to switch from playing in person to playing online, so that introduced some crazy. And I'll post screenshots of my Roll20 setups as I go along. So there you go. I think just these principles, they aren't just principles like, behold the things I know. It's much more like things that I learn over and over. And with this campaign especially, this is a great group of players, and we're all really invested. We're playing weekly, so we get through a lot of content. These are realizations just as much as principles. They're like, oh man, yeah, and that's why this video came about with all its technical difficulties. So that is the current sort of story of the men of Mugburg. They are struggling to stop the Lord of Blades from constructing a titanic warforged dragon as the ultimate weapon to kind of dominate Eberron once and for all. Lord of Blades is a real sort of a disgruntled kind of enemy. And you guys can definitely read up the 5e Eberron book is one of my favorite ones. And then we have one final twist, which is that there is an unknown continent, kind of like Atlantis, in our game, and that is Matt Mercer's World of Wildmount, which is my all-time favorite 5e book besides the Monster Manual. Absolutely love that book. It's really fantastic. I love the way that Mercer wrote it. I did a whole podcast, I believe, on why I like Wildmount so much, so you can find that over on Patreon. Okay. There you go. That's 8 sessions of gameplay that we have done. We play between 3 and 5 hours per session. We play on Roll20 right now, once a week. So it's been a blast, and I just wanted to let you guys in on the skinny there. So now I can sort of get back to see the comment. Hey, you guys are throwing in some tips. That's great. Thank you. That'll go to beer money for sure. Okay, so why are there 200 people here? This is insane. You guys are nuts. So it's sort of a big, long stream of consciousness, right, about what my campaign is. But for me, it's really important to just lay these details out because I want you guys to feel solidarity between me and you. I'm not just a sort of talking head on YouTube, especially since I got to Philly and met this new group of friends. That weekly essence, the real core of what this hobby is right back. And of course, because of these crazy sort of times that we're living in with quarantine, that contributes to it. I mean, it's one of the biggest highlights of the week to meet up and hear your friends' voices and roll some dice. You know what I mean? It's yeah, it's a big deal. So I think partially I wanted to, lay down what has happened in the campaign. We've made all these monsters, we've had all this nautical theme, we've had pirate stuff going on, we've had gnomes in merman suits, and we've had a lot of cool magic armor. We've had dwarves who are forging adamantium shields and cool stuff like that. Lots of fun accents and whatnot. We actually have one of our weapons has a name. Her name is Lady Stanella, and she's sort of treated as a character. So on the one hand, I wanted to report all that to you guys, but also I just wanted to get these details out because sometimes on this side of the camera, it feels a little bit weird, sort of giving off this sort of, professorial personality. Here's all the stuff that I know about D&D. It's a little strange. So I just wanted to put a stream out that's basically just a reminder that I just play every week just like you do. And it is a frickin' blast. Okay. That is the main bulk of the stream. You can send the kids out of the room because it's time for a little bit of Q&A here. And also, I have got a metric ton of announcements to make, and I just want to put them all right into this stream. It was so funny yesterday. I botched this stream completely. I basically didn't hit the button and talked into the air for an hour, just what I just sort of described. And that video still just being nothing still got 3,000 views in one night. So I just thought to myself, hey, that's funny. I can actually reach everybody. And so that's a nice feeling. So I wanted to do that today with the announcements. But yeah, it was a bit of a tease. Sorry about that. Do you, I don't really, just for Jules up there, I don't really look at Reddit. Yeah, I appreciate that you're modding that group. That's awesome. Reddit, just something about the format. I get lost in there. Like, it's just all this text sort of swims in my eyes and everything. So, okay. So here it is. Let's do these stinking announcements. What's up with the announcements? Okay, first of all, elephant in the room, quarantine. Gosh darn it. I hope everybody out there is keeping it together, and I know it's affecting everyone in different and terrible ways, and I know it's frustrating, and it's lonely, and it's annoying, and it's just reaching this point of complete insanity. It's one of the craziest, saddest, most intense things that I've ever experienced, maybe that we will experience in our lives. It's really tough, and just, I know you probably hear this from a million different sources every day, but you're hearing it from me right now. We can make it. We can do it. Stay smart. Be patient. It's going to be all right. We'll find a way. We always do. And just remember to send a little bit extra love out to your community in whatever way feels good for you. There's a lot of need right now for a little bit of extra love. So if you can find a way in your own community or your own neighborhood or even your own family or your friends to help in some way, or just to buzz out positive vibrations, take the time to do it. It's really great. And last week on Friday night for happy hour, thanks to you awesome people, we raised $200 for Sunny Skies Shelter, which is an overflow animal shelter for little doggos and kitties that are having a hard time finding a home. And so the next morning, I come in and I tally up the donations from the stream, and I send the money right to Sunny Skies Shelter. So whatever. But what was amazing is on Monday, the owner of that animal shelter emailed me personally, directly, and just said how grateful she was and what a difference that's going to make, because they're such a tiny little company. That $200, buys a whole lot of dog food, basically. So that may seem small, but to me, that felt freaking epic. I was just like, that felt fantastic. So that's my first announcement. It's like, hang in there, everybody. Like, keep it real. Be nice. Be friendly. Be patient. Be considerate of other people. And take care of yourself. Take care of those you can, and so on and so forth. Okay, so hell yeah. All right. Whew. The next one is about the sort of the split up of channels that you guys are going to be seeing. So we have been having a blast doing the Friday night happy hour DJ sets. And it's also because of quarantine. It's another thing for me to look forward to. We have a local bar who's obviously closed, who's been doing Monday night trivia via Instagram. And it's become like part of our life. It's like, it may sound silly, but it's like very exciting for Monday night to come and do trivia on Instagram with, maybe 25 other people or something. But it made me realize too, like, how these sort of regular sort of in-home fun bits, they matter more than maybe they did a little bit before. And so that made me want to commit to doing a weekly DJ mix, like a 3-hour mix every single Friday night, and get into it, because I was seeing that, like a few hundred people are showing up, and it's fun to look forward to that. So I don't want like DJing to clutter up Runehammer. Runehammer is about freaking bone crunching D&D. And the Dungeon DJ is about DJing on Friday night. And they mesh in such a weird way. So I don't want people who are looking for Runehammer stuff, you guys, to have to rummage through a bunch of DJ sets to find my latest video. And conversely, I don't want people who just want to hang out on Friday night and listen to music have to rummage through a bunch of D&D videos. So if you look on YouTube, there is now a channel called The Dungeon DJ. If you're interested in showing up, tonight is going to be the first night that we're going to stream right on that channel. You can go sub that channel, and every week we're going to pick a new charity, and we're going to raise funds. Since it's such a small, growing channel, we don't have Super Chat over there yet until we get 1,000 subscribers, which could be this weekend. But we're going to be using Venmo tonight. We're going to be raising money for Phil Abundance, which is a really cool sort of community-sourced food bank here in Philly, and also just wanted to bring visibility to food banks in all cities across the world. So everybody should be taking a look at what's sort of going on to help people who are hungry right now, because I'll tell you what, there's zillions of them. It's like a tough time. People who never imagined they would ever be needing a food box are out there needing a food box, and it's very, very inexpensive to help them. So we're going to be raising money for that tonight. So if you're interested in hanging out for DJ Happy Hour, You're not going to see him on Runehammer anymore. You've got to go over to the Dungeon DJ on YouTube. You can also find the Dungeon DJ on Facebook, where we're going to be like co-casting. We're going to simulcast like back in the PBS days. And both will have the Venmo link so that we can try to raise some money for people who are needing a food box this weekend, which I think there are a great many of them. Crazy times. Okay, that's the one. Okay, so that's tonight. So I hope to see you guys tonight. Been gathering tracks all week. Every DJ mix is a big project. It's just like setting up a game session, honestly. You need to get all your homework done so that you have a mental command of what's at your fingertips. You know, you can't really run a good game session if you're like forgetting what the armor class is on everything, or if you're always needing to look up things. And DJing is no different. You kind of need a bit of a mental command to loosely go with the flow. Maybe that's why those things do have a sort of a meshing for me, is like they both are kind of a similar play to the room kind of a thing. Anyway, so that's that. I hope to see you guys all there. That's just going to keep going for the foreseeable future. I absolutely love throwing down DJ sets on Friday night. It's just sort of part of my life. I know it's weird to think of like Dungeon Master, DJ, I don't know, whatever. Rock on. Next announcement. This one is insane. I can't believe this finally came together. Yeah, and yes, I do live in Philly, PA. And I freaking love it here. I can't wait till whatever the world is going to become after the quarantine. Whatever it becomes, I can't wait to experience it here in Philly. I love this place. I love the people. I love the weather. I love the freaking food here. Love the beer. Okay, next announcement. This one's crazy. More than a year ago, 2 years ago almost, thoughts started spreading in the Runehammer community about building our own alternative to Roll20. So Roll20, as many of you know, has a bit of a steep learning curve when you're first getting into it. It can feel like it has way more features than maybe you really need. And especially now that so many of us are playing online, this is kind of coming into the spotlight a little more than I thought it would, of using online gameplay tools, virtual tabletops, VTTs, right? And Roll20 to me is great. We still use Roll20, but it has so much more capability than I wanted. And to me, it also just, it has too many things going on. There's like a lot of buttons and little tabs and things that distract me from my bone smashing, tooth breaking D&D session, shield bashing D&D, and that's where I want my focus to be. So about 2 years ago, thoughts started kind of trickling around the Runehammer community about making our own VTT software that would be cleaner and simpler and more elegant than Roll20. Okay, that started. The conversation rose and fell several times, mainly because when you get a lot of people sort of all trying to come up with something to create, it can be very, very difficult to get any momentum on any one idea because there's so many decent ideas, right? So it kind of came and went. It sort of rose and fell and disappeared. Well, the conversation kicked up again about the beginning of this year. And this time I sort of just said, you know, let's just let it go as like a community idea. And then I found myself, by pure luck and by his wonderful generosity, I found myself a top secret engineer. And this guy, me and him have fantastic chemistry. And I told him my vision for this VTT. And instead of being horrified and running off into the hills, he was the first person who said, that makes sense. Let's do it. I like this idea, because my idea was quite extreme. I wanted a VTT software that was so simple and intuitive to use that it had no instructions, that it didn't have any tooltips or any kind of anything like that. It didn't have a manual. It didn't have an FAQ. You just go in and you're just doing it. You're using a VTT. And so we are now in the middle of our beta test of this thing. So if you're an Immortal patron on my Patreon page right now, you can get your Discord login, which is used to be part of the beta test program for the Runehammer virtual tabletop. So, oh my gosh, I put up a couple of sort of super secret posts about this. But here, actually, I think I can... Yeah, so you guys have probably seen a few posts on Twitter and elsewhere. I don't know if I can just bring this up. I don't know how to do that. So you'll see it coming. So keep an eye on my Twitter, on my Facebook, Runehammer Facebook, and I'm going to start putting up some announcements. the Runehammer VTT is working. We've got servers around the globe. We have a user tracking behavior, so that if we get more users in a certain part of the globe, we can adjust how the servers are being bolstered and where we put basically resources. So part of the finance that comes in through Patreon is making all this possible, running all these servers, paying my engineer, and getting sandwiches. Sandwiches are important. And until we reach a sort of a larger scale, which I don't know when that will be, we're going to make it available to all the $1 patrons on my Patreon page. Now, the reason that we're using Patreon is not because it's a paywall. It is absolutely not the reason. It's because Patreon has a really nice, secure login. And so what you do is you use your Patreon login to log into the Runehammer VTT. And that way we keep everything very secure and we have good privacy, blah, blah, blah. So until we reach a point where we're going to break out of that and just do our own security protocol system with our own logins and all proprietary, which honestly will be another big investment, we're going to continue to use Patreon as the login method. So it's not ready for everyone to consume quite yet, just this sort of beta testers, which are my sort of top tier patrons. So thank you guys, by the way. But the news isn't that. The news is that it's going great. It's totally awesome. It's a really simple drag and drop VTT. And once it's really done, I'll do a whole video on how it works and why we built it the way we built it, because it's nothing like Roll20. It's extremely different from all the other VTTs in that it's ultra minimal. And I think you guys are going to really like it. It's very visual. And I'm really freaking excited because I had kind of given up that this would ever be a thing. But it's a thing, and I think a lot of people are going to be enjoying it very soon. So that's super exciting. So please keep an eye out for the Runehammer VTT. I think it's going to be a little bit of a game changer in some ways. I'm just jazzed about it because I like Roll20, but Roll20 just has way more than I want. The Runehammer one just lets you roll dice and lets you move tokens around on maps and stuff. It's very clean with an atmospheric look to it rather than like a weird white window. Okay, so there's that. Keep an eye out for announcements, and we will make it as available to as many people as we possibly can while keeping it secure. Okay, so that's that one. We got the Dungeon DJ, we got Runehammer VTT, and then the last one, this is the Big Daddy Kane right here. So you guys may have seen that a lot of my projects are wrapping right now. So 5e Hardcore Mode came out. Castle of Mirrors came out, did really well. A lot of the readers just jumped right over from Hardcore to Castle of Mirrors, so I'm glad everybody's enjoying that. All the patrons get all this stuff for free all the time. So that was great. I just needed to get those out of my system. So then with Runehammer VTT, getting out of my system, getting completed, and Retune, my branching narrative novel, is now in its final state. So you're going to be seeing it pop up on Amazon and on DriveThruRPG. This thing has taken ages to perfect, but I'm terribly proud of it. And it's going to be a really fun thing to be doing on your lawn chair this summer, is to read through this. It's almost like a giant puzzle, this book. It's really fun. And it has been so challenging to try to perfect it so that the moods are consistent and cool. And the way the puzzles, it's really, you can read this thing maybe 20, 30 times to try to find all the different hidden chapters and the different endings and stuff like that. So what I was getting at, with Retune out of the way, with Virtual Tabletop out of the way, with Castle of Mirrors, 5e Hardcore Mode out of the way, with Viking Death Squad is currently postponed because there's no cons this year, and it's a con game. And then Pirate's Crown is a card game I was working on that I think maybe was just a sort of brain fart. So with all that stuff out of the way, mental clarity, creative freedom, oh my gosh, it's time to dig in fully to Index Card RPG 3rd edition. Now you might be saying, what's wrong with 2nd edition? Index Card RPG 2nd edition is like one of the all-time best sellers on DriveThruRPG, like one of the top 0.01%. Like you guys have made it a really sticky, really a hit, and I'm so happy about that. But it exists over the span of like 4 different books, different volumes of material, and then some PDFs like Vigilante City and some other stuff that it's all this sort of big kludged mess. And also the rules have evolved after 4 years of gameplay. And so third edition not only consolidates all that stuff, improves the rules with all of the thousands of hours of playtesting that we have, it's also completely reimagined. It's like all new art. Everything's brand new. The book is sort of designed, it has some inspiration from Burning Wheel as far as like what the book looks like and the size of it and everything. So I've always loved that book as far as an artifact goes. So it's going to kind of look and feel something like that. But this is a huge deal. I've been waiting years for the momentum to feel right to do this. So it's coming. So also keep an eye out, and I'll post some little teasers here and there as that begins to evolve. Whew, man, that was a mouthful. I'll tell you what. So we're just going to get back to normal like room design type videos next week. We'll get back to just thinking about a small little piece of content. But I just wanted to get live and tell you guys about all this crazy, and also send my heart out because, quarantine is tough, and like, even quarantine is the easy part. The hard part is getting sick and losing somebody you love. And, just if you've been touched in that way by this, lost your job or you're struggling, just don't hesitate to reach out to others and look for help. And we are going to stick together through this thing. And D&D is going to be the torch that lights the way through this this dark year. Okay. So everybody, stay healthy out there. Stay happy. Stay safe. Keep it real. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. It's great to see 215 of you out here. It's absolutely awesome. And for all of you guys who are like always messaging me, talking to me about your projects and chatting with me on Discord and this whole storm of energy that is around our hobby, it's such a privilege to be in that crazy, chaotic storm and do this stuff. It's just a blast. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'll see you guys tonight for the Dungeon DJ. And if you guys got other plans tonight, like watching a movie or something, then I'll probably catch you about next week with a room design video. Okay, so keep it real, you guys. Don't steal. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to get out of here and, I don't know, get myself a hoagie or something. Okay. Take it easy, y'all. See you next time.